All right, welcome back. We left off with this scene here, or one very similar to it. I made a little bit of changes, uh, which has terrain, has some trees in it, and some water, and a character controller, a first-person controller. And so we were able to run, and walk around in here, and we'd be able to see this. Um, okay, looks good. Now, I don't like that for mouse look. It's just not the way I want to get rid of that. I'm going to change, so I'm going to want to change the first-person controller. I also don't like all this water here. I mean, do we really? Hopefully, we need all these reflection cameras. Good grief! But we need a lot of water pieces because they can only scale so much, and they do tile, so I've got them scaled to 2 by 2 in the X and Z direction, and I've got them placed at 200 units apart. And I'll scale it, come back out here, and that gives me kind of a view of what's going on here. It's good enough that we see a good horizon at sea level, but if you get up on top of those mountains, we're going to see the edge of it. Okay. May change that later, but for one thing that's certain is that I don't like all of this mess over here. Can't work with it. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to create an empty game object, hit F2, and rename it to water stuff. So I'm going to take all this water stuff and put it in there, which is almost everything for right now. I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to come down here and select almost everything. So I just shift click, and that selects everything in that range. Okay, this is the correct list except for the directional light in the terrain, so I'll just hit Control, click, click, and now I have isolated it to just the water pieces. At least hopefully I have. Scroll down to the bottom. I will left click in this middle of this, drag to water stuff. Wait until that little thing is highlighted, release. And at that point, if I scroll back up here, everything should be a child water stuff. So that's a good use of an empty game object. Sometimes we attach scripts to them and run them that way. Sometimes they're just containers like this to hide a lot of stuff. Now we can find things here. All these white lines in here are, I believe, the viewing frustrums from the different cameras. It's kind of crazy. We just click on terrain, they're gone. We don't need to look at water anymore. I'm going to click on water and they come back. Okay. It's also interesting that water has a transform. Every object does. And remember that all parented stuff have a transform off of their parent. So that should mean that I can up, raise, and lower the sea level just by taking the parent up and down. That's kind of a useful thing. Okay, saves me from having to go in and select all of that water individually. Alright, so I'm happy. That's good. Next problem here is dealing with this first-person controller. This is going to be a hassle. Okay, so maybe it's just my OCD, but I don't like changing standard assets. I might want to use the standard asset later. I might want to look at the standard asset. And while any changes I make are only local to my project, I can always go to a different project and pull up the standard character controller and look at it. I'd rather have it available here just because. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make a copy of this first-person controller. And this is going to be a hassle, I admit. But we only have to do it once. Okay. Now, I'm having better luck with Control-D today. I think I had a program that was capturing that over on my desktop, so I got used to not using it. I'm going to rename this to be Player Controller, mainly so that it has a different name and I can tell what I'm using. And I'm going to take and drag that up into my Assets folder. Okay, making sure that that little blue oval thing was highlighted, so I'm actually dragging it there. Now, that should be the end of standard assets for us for a while. I can only hope. Now, what I'm going to do here inside my assets is I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it scripts. Probably not the best name because this is more than a script. This is a prefab. Maybe I should call it prefabs. Alright, call prefabs and put the character controller underneath it. Now when I click on it, I see my character controller. It really, though, is more than just a prefab because there's a whole bunch of other stuff here. We have the audio, which is the 4 footsteps that I told you about, only 2 of which were being used. Jump and land. The prefabs, which has a couple of things. An FPS controller, okay, which I'm going to rename the player controller. And it has a first-person character under another prefab underneath it. That came along for the ride. That has camera, audio listener, flare layer. Okay, I can live with that. I'm going to remove the FPS controller at this point. It leaves me no cameras rendering. That way there's no collision between the two. There are going to be enough of those problems without it. If I go in here, I see that there's a first-person controller script. This is the only thing that's in the other namespace that I'm aware of. And if I click on it, oops, if I click on this, whoa, I didn't mean for you to do that, Visual Studio. It just loaded that script. In fact, okay, I close Visual Studio. It's probably going to come up with that thing in there again, which is going to be a reason to change its name. If I click on it once and double click, it now shows me that it's in scripts and first-person controller. So every time I click on it, it highlights it. Okay, that tells me it's using the one out of this folder. I do not want to use that one. How do I change that? Well, I get rid of it to start with. Remove the component. Gone. Okay, I'm going to need to put the component back in. This has been a bit of a challenge. If I have that thing here, I can drag it in here, but it's going to collide with the other thing. I'm going to double click on this. Now I'm going to bring up Visual Studio for real. Come on, Visual Studio. Okay. Alright, live with that. Note, this is Visual Studio 2017. Not sure if I mentioned it in this video or not. I just updated Visual Studio to the 2017 edition because the 2015 edition, which is what Unity installed for me this semester, it had some bugs in it that were really annoying me. I'd get exceptions when I'd load a script, and it's like those went away when I pulled this. You can easily get this by going to visualstudio.microsoft.com and then selecting download for Windows Community 2017. Okay. They have one for Mac too. I don't know where you get that, but they're okay. The Visual Studio for Mac 7.5. All right, but I know there's one for Windows is driving me nuts. So far so good. Okay, now it's got the 2 controllers in here. I'm going to delete that one. This controller here, if I hover, it will show me the path, and it is indeed underneath my course project directory here. So that's good. I want that. Now, I should only need to change the namespace here to be RPG. Okay. Now, it's still going to pull in cross-platform input and utility out of standard assets. That's fine. I don't want to change those. I just want to change this. And it's going to say it's going to require a character controller and an audio source in anything that it brings in. I'm going to also rename this to first person. That's fine. This will be I'm trying to highlight this. It's really hard to see because call it player controller. So make sure the class name. Shouldn't have to do that. Okay, I should be able to use any class name I want inside my namespace without it colliding. However, it is a problem. Now, mouse look. The reason mouse look isn't found is because it's in a different namespace than what we used to be. And I could explicitly list the namespace, and it would be fine. Or I could be thankful that mouse look is going to go away. I'll just delete it. And we'll use these handy compiler errors over here to locate the lines where mouse look is on and get rid of them. Okay, don't need them, don't want them. But if there's ever any doubt on what this step does, remember I have not changed the standard asset. I can go look in there and see exactly what mouse look used to do, if it matters to me later on. Alright, I'll save that off. Double check that I am indeed inside my project in a new namespace with a new class name and no mouse look there. This has been saved off. That should compile. And I should now just be able to click on my controller. And I don't want the click on the prefab. I'm going to try to bring the script in this way. Fix compiler errors. What compiler errors? And saying assets, standard assets. I'm not doing anything in standard assets. I don't believe I'm doing anything in standard assets. Why are you causing me this grief? This is not in the standard assets namespace even. So we're going to have, this is where I'm going to struggle a bit. Hate doing that. But it's like, what in the world? If I type clear, it's still complaining about that. There is nothing in here that's standard assets. The script here is clear. It's just saying the namespace standard assets already contains a reference for first-person controller. I'm not defining another first-person controller. 2140, that was 7 minutes ago. All these errors are 7 minutes ago, and yet they won't clear. All right. You know what I think I'll do right now is I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to save everything in the scene, project, and I'm going to pause the video and reload. Okay, much better now. See, just the saving and reloading. So I'll chalk this one up to a bit of a Unity nonsense that I can't explain because obviously this is the same code I just saved and reloaded, but now I've got error messages or warnings now instead of errors, and they're at the right time. So a whole bunch of stuff is saying this is obsolete, that's obsolete. Hey, it's not my code. Okay. We won't worry about that just yet. Okay. Why are you even compiling it when I'm not using it yet? But apparently you are. So if I go to this prefab and come on prefab, select the character controller, I should be able to go now hit scripts and drag the first person controller in here, and it'll say compiler errors. I don't see any compiler errors. You see any compiler errors? Script cannot, because script class, the script class can't be found. Oh, I changed the name of the class. Silly me. That's, I didn't ask you to bring up Visual Studio. I just changed the name of this stupid thing. Alright, well, maybe you'll run into that too at some point. Player controller, drag it down here, and yay, it's there. Okay, I'll just single click on that, and it is indeed highlighted the correct folder here. So I should have clear a character controller or a player controller prefab that I can drag in here and drop, thunk, and it should be, well, nothing there. Now, all these numbers are wrong. If I hit play, it will dutifully bring up the thing, but none of the keys work. Can't see that. Mouse doesn't do anything. Already better. But I'm going to need to restore these values here. Okay, so it's a good thing that I wrote them down. Let me just pause the video and bring up my list. Alright, so I check on this. See, is walking was not turned on. Walk speed was at 5. Run speed was at 10. This lengthen was at 0.7. I could just type it in, but jump speed was at 10. And okay, I can just tab over to that. Stick to ground force 10. Tab. Gravity, that was a tab. Gravity multiplier was 2. The FOV kick, click this head bob. Actually turn off head bob for now. Let's see if I can live without it because I don't like it. Step interval is at 5. Footstep sounds. If I click, it says it has 0 of these things. Well, there were 2 prior to this, and so I will, if I just click on element 0. Now, here's where it's going to get a bit of annoyance. You just have to put up with it once, but you see that there are duplicates for each one of these. Because when I copied the whole project across, the controller across, I got new audio. I'm going to go ahead and use the new audio and do with it. I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to see this is under my asset prefab folder. That's a good first step. Click on that one, and I'll try here. Asset prefab. Guess go right again. This is the jump sound. Click on that little gear thing and find that there are 2 jumps. Click on this one. Asset prefab. Good. Click on this one here. This is the land. And see, if I click on the wrong one, it'll say Asset Standard Assets. Click on this. And that's good. Okay, so those are all of the settings that I have there. If I now click on this, it should list everything in my folder. And you notice that there are 2 more footsteps, but hey, the original controller wasn't using them either. So now I hit play. And mouse look isn't working. Okay, so already better. Except I have to dodge trees. Okay. See, I get moved out of the way when I run into a tree. Physics is responding to that. That sound is a bit loud. I'll just go to the player controller, open it up, go to the first person character here. Is that where it is? No. Here. Oh, it's the audio source. And I'll just drop this volume way down. Okay, let me just test it real quick. Much better. Okay, so now I can reach up here and click on this without disturbing the whole scene. That'll be important later. One thing I can do, and I'll do it now, is that if I click on the stats window down here, we can see statistics here. And I can barely see this because of the shading here. I'm running at about 30 frames per second. Okay. And it goes up here. Now, turn that off. Let's get some rotation in there, and we'll find out that really most of my frame drop is occurring not because of the water, but because of this terrain over here. We can adjust that by dropping the far clip plane of the camera. However, when I do that, that's going to make the cutoff of the water very obvious here, because it will clip it before the end of it, and it'll just look like the end of the world over here with this gray. A better solution would be to, well, maybe clip the camera out, but also to set up some sort of shader to give the illusion of an infinite horizon. Okay, so let's now gonna pause the video and we'll bring up my script to edit the character controller. Okay, let's checking. Doesn't have it there. I'll go back into my scripts, and here is the player controller script. Alright, double check it's in the correct namespace. It's bringing in a few pieces here. That's good. It's caching well, it's using random as this, so it's this kind of a shortcut to the name. I still want it to require a character controller and an audio source. These variables here are as we talked in class, while they're private, they have a serialized field, and that makes them available in the editor. If I bring it over here and I click on the controller, you'll see all of these variables down here. And I'll scroll Visual Studio back in, and you'll see that they correspond. Okay, so even though they are private, cannot be changed by code outside of this class, they can be changed by the editor because of this serialized field. Okay, the other thing that will show up in the editor are any public variables. But it's not good design to have too many publics inside of your class. Because we want to keep that kind of in that compartmentalization. Okay, we already got rid of the annoying mouse look stuff, so I don't have any problems there. Let's take a look at my notes here and see what's going on here. If I change anything, I'm going to want to add in some keys to do rotation here, and see if any of that stuff. I don't know I'm going to need to do anything in Start right off the top of my head. I may find it later. Update called once per frame. It calls rotate view, which used to be the mouse look, and so I will go ahead and change the code in there. This is the jump, which accesses the cross-platform input manager. Well, we'll want to do some stuff with that here in a second. That is the cross-platform input manager. With that, play landing sound. Fixed update is the movement code, because it's checking the input to see which axis is being modified, horizontal and vertical, and then moving the character controller around according to that. Let's see, do I want to do my stuff here inside get input? Let me check my notes over here. And I don't think so. I don't think I see anything here. I think let's just go down to rotate view and work there for a second. First of all, I'm going to want a button to do rotation. We already have a good model for that up here. We can see that horizontal and vertical changes, and maybe that isn't the best name for them. They're not my names here, because vertical is not moving us in the vertical direction. This is really X and Z changes, so it's north-south and east-west movement. Those are being pulled across as floating point values from the cross-platform input manager. So these will be values from like -1 to 1. If we go to Unity, and if I go to, if I remember where it is, project settings input, indeed brings up that. Click on axis, and we see we have all these axes there. One example, well, we see we've already looked at horizontal and vertical being used. We see that horizontal is that left and right buttons are the primary, and then A and D are the secondary. So they're set up to use WASD for movement as well as the arrow keys. Okay, there's some values here that will be used to simulate an analog controller with digital keys, because keys are either up or down. We can't push our key down halfway. All right, so that's an example of an axis, and we see we can have a positive and negative version. I'm going to want to do the same thing, so I'm going to create another one here. I do not know why, and this is a stock project. We have the horizontal and vertical. We have three fires, and then we come down here. We have horizontal again with no buttons. We have vertical with no buttons. Oh, those are joystick axis. I get it. That's for the joystick. Alright, and then a couple of submits and a cancel. So what I will want to do is I will want to create another one. Easiest way to do that, see that this is 18. I can barely see it here with this small font size. I'm going to create one called at 19. And, hello, 19. It's duplicated my cancel, hasn't it? Yeah. Okay. Not sure why it did that. Submit and submit are the same thing as well. Well, return and enter. So they have two things here. Escape, escape. So it really did just duplicate this last one. Is what it looks like here. Okay. I'm going to rename this to rotate. And I'll take the caps lock off. And this is the, I'll call it camera rotation. And I'll spell it correctly. Okay, for the negative button, I'm going to use did we actually I want to hijack the left and right keys here from horizontal. This is really strafing and not left and right movement. So what I'm going to do is just take these, first of all, I'll just take these left and right buttons out of here. And I will put them down here for left and right. And then I'll get rid of the joystick button. I don't know about gravity 100. What was it being used for horizontal? Gravity 3. Okay. Sensitivity was 3. Okay. Yeah, okay. I have no idea why it's doing that, but it appears that the axis and joystick number probably only matter if it's a joystick. So I've created a new axis here that we use the left and right buttons here. And I can go ahead and just get out of here and go back to my player controller. Furthermore, I can go down here. So what that means now is that I can create a, whoops, come on, float rotate button equals cross platform input manager dot, and I'll say get axis. That's a good thing to do. And then I'll do rotate. Okay. So that's sort of kind of like what was being done right here. I pulled in a floating point number, and now I'll just say M character controller. If you look at the old rotate code, you'll see something like that. I'm going to do transform.rotate. And now, what axis am I going to rotate it around? I'm going to rotate it around the y-axis. Okay, and this is a case where we use the right-hand rule, and I want to use the up as my rotation, so that the positive will be my fingers of my right hand curling, show me what the positive direction is. So vector 3 dot up. And now I'm going to multiply this times the rotate button. And now what we're going to see here is that this is, I should scale it to time dot delta time. This is an update. This is not in fixed update. So I am going to have to scale things with time. This isn't going to quite work as well as I would have liked to, as you'll see, but it's important to see this is kind of the very bare bones of it there. I'm going to rotate it around, and the magnitude of the rotation is going to be based on this button here. So positive or negative, depending on which axis it's coming across. This float pulls both values. Negative will be the negative up to -1. The positive control will go up to +1. And then we scale it by time, so however much time the frame is spin between frames, we'll scale it that way. All right, click on this, and thunk. Here I am. Now I'll just hold down the right key, and we are scrolling around right very, very slowly. Okay, now stop, and then I'll scroll back the other way. Okay, there's my rotation. It does work. The only thing that's wrong with that, if we want to use the word wrong, is it's just the wrong magnitude here. I want a scaling factor to be applied. Now, how do I know what that scaling factor should be? As you can see, I'm scrolling all the way up here. And I think I will add in a serialized field, private rotate speed. I'm sorry, float. I'll call it M. I do not like Hungarian notation. I don't know what that value should be. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to 1.0f. Variables should always be initialized. What is your complaint here? Potential issues to fix. What's my potential fix? Encapsulate, use property. Oh, alright. So you prefer that if I'm going to be setting it in the editor, that I'll set the value in the editor. Is that what you're complaining about? No, do not. Oh well. It'll be fixed in the editor. If I come back down here to where it's being used, I'm just going to add in M underbar rotate speed times. Alright, and what is this little thing here? It's quick actions, whatever. Save. And let's go back over here to us. And at this point, if I look down here, I have a new member in my thing here, and it's set to 0. That's what it's initialized to. All right. I would prefer the slider to do this. If I was going to do a slider, I probably want to get a feel for how big it should be. I'm just going to hit run, and oh, you know what? Stop. So I turned off maximize on play so that I can access this little thing. And let's set it to 2. Better. Let's set it to 4. Oops. 4. Still better. Let's set it to 8. Doubling it each time. Let's set it to 16. That seems a little bit slow too. 32. Okay, well, yeah, it's going to have to be bigger than that. 64. Oh, all right, let's set it to 100. Enough of these. Okay, I think I can live with that. This is now consistent with my forward speed. Hopefully nobody's getting sick and throwing up with this, but that's a good speed there. Now, while I'm doing this, let's take a look at the frame speed. Now, it's gone up because I'm just using a small window here. So frame speed, it depends on the size of the screen. Now, I was using a very large screen there, so that cost me. But notice that my graphics speed here goes up when I'm looking at the water with all the shaders and everything, and goes down when I'm looking at the land. So here I was worried that I was really going to be taxing the system by putting in all this water. It does not appear to be showing me any GPU statistics. Indeed, I do get higher GPU utilization when I'm over here. When I under Windows, I can look that up through the Windows taskbar and Let's see if I can bring that up. Task Manager, bring Task Manager in here, click on the Performance tab, and I see my GPU there. Now I am using a GTX 760, an older graphics card, but I bought that like 4 years ago, and it's a pretty good graphics card. You know, I'm happy with it there. If I oh, I wish I could pin this thing on top. I don't really have an easy way of doing that. Well, I can just slide this over. Okay. Now, if I move over here, GPU utilization 36% says. Go back over here, 29, 30%. Let's enter CPU. I want GPU. Sorry, I got the wrong thing there. That's nothing. That is truly nothing. And the other thing that's interesting is that my GPU utilization really doesn't go down when I'm facing away from the water. Alright, so I'm going to call that a non-issue. Collapse that down. Thank you very much, Task Manager, for your able assistance. Alright, performance is one of those areas that fits under premature optimization, and I don't want to look at it too early, but I do have to look at it time for time, especially right now, to say, am I doing something that's really, really going to hurt me? Before I spend a whole lot of time investing in stuff. You know, I might have to rethink things if my water was really killing me. My only complaint with this is the terrain. The clipping plane of the camera is showing too much terrain, and that's dragging me down. Now, we did learn that a rotate speed of 100 is a pretty good rotation here. Note that we are in this environment here where all the data has been taken from the editor and sent over to the runtime. When I click stop, it's back to 0. And that's because these data only goes one way. The good news is that means that we can safely experiment without breaking anything. Bad news is we have to remember what we changed. If I change that now those changes do get sent over. Okay, and I will now click maximize on play. Oops, not pause. Run. I can bring up the stats window here and see what it's like full screen. And I'm seeing something like 30, 40 frames per second. And then I go up here like 70 frames per second when I get to the water. Okay, this is for a fairly large window size. So you can see here, down here, 2400 by 1220 is the window that I have. All right, which is pretty large there. So I might want to fix that. If I were going to do that, I would go find the camera, which is down here under the first-person character, and I'd see that I have the far clipping plane set to 1000. If I set that to 500, my frame rate is up to around 60 now. Water still looks okay. I haven't clipped off too much there. So I've got a good frame rate boost just by adjusting my clipping plane here. Where we'd really notice is we went up to the top here. Now, let's see, to run, I hit the left. Oh, that isn't working? We'll check on that. The character controller should handle left shift, I believe it is. Maybe I've got it wrong here. I'm scrolling back up to see where that is looked at. Not exactly seeing it. Okay, walking was walking. Input get key left shift right there. All right, as long as we're not mobile, and the speed should be. Oh, you know what that suggests? Let's go take a look at the character controller settings. Did I miss? Oh, run speed. Ha, forgot that. Let's set that run speed to 10. There's my problem. It did indeed handle that just fine. There we go. And that let me cover ground a little bit better. So we've taken about 40 minutes of your time to go over this. It's probably long enough for a video. These are sort of supplementing the lectures. You can already see the water, how it's clipping here. And as I turn my camera, the water clipping is coming in. This is showing me the effect of the far clipping plane. So that's the cost of setting that down to 500. Now, if I'm willing to live with 20 frames per second, which I might, there's a little bit of water there. Ah, okay. Probably should adjust that water height there, because I ran the water underneath the entire island just so that it would make lakes when it was supposed to, but I didn't take into account that the wave motion was going to cause the water to come up and down. I should either drop the water some more or raise this elevation up. Yeah. Okay, that's good enough for now. We've got we've updated the character controller. We've got the things cleaned up. Why do I have more camera stuff over here? Are these even being used here? I bet they're from the first-person controller, but will it really bring in two more of these? Something's not quite right. And I have a feeling that these are probably all superfluous. But I'll look into that later. All right, so let's take care of it now, and then next time we'll move on with some more things, maybe even models for 3D characters.